And we'll go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Shannon Souza. I'm the program manager for Ocean. I also am the principal for Soul Coast Consulting and Design, which is a sustainability consulting and contracting firm. I'm also the chair of policy for Oregon Solar Energy Industry Association, and I represent the professional engineers of Oregon at our National Society of Professional Engineers, where we are drafting finally a platform on sustainability. Wear a couple of other hats, but I think that those are the ones most relevant to the conversation today. Next down the line from my vantage point on Zoom here, we have Pedro. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Shannon. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pedro Monaco. I'm the director of the Hinsdale Web Research Laboratory at Oregon State University. And I'm pleased to be here in this series of chats.
Thank you. And Sean Stevens.
Good morning. I'm Sean Stevens. I'm a Regional Development Officer for Business Oregon, covering Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Jamie Faraday.
Yeah, I'm also a Soul Coast person. I am an energy analyst, retired teacher, public schools, currently on the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and I've been a resident here since 1985.
Mm-hmm. And you've actually seen some of these big turbines.
Yes, I saw the Principal Power first launch in Portugal, or just before it launched.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Katie, I see we have Katie and Bill. Would you both introduce yourselves, please? Sorry, Bill, you can finish chewing.
Sorry. Katie, I'm attorney and currently candidate for Coos County Commissioner, and promoting wind energy on the South Coast. And Bill Bradbury?
And Bill Bradbury, former Oregon Secretary of State, and a huge advocate for renewable energy development and the improvements that can make for our climate.
Congratulations on the primary, Katie.
Thank you.
Michael Graney.
Hey.
Hi, Mike Graney. I'm former director of the Oregon Department of Energy, and I'm doing renewable energy consulting on my own. And great to see Bill and Katie again.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Mike. Hot dog.
Great. I'm having trouble with my video, but glad to be here.
He's having a dark day. Bill Gorham.
Yeah, hi. I'm Bill Gorham. I'm a retired marine biologist. I spent about 30 years in environmental consulting, largely managing environmental assessments and large scale energy projects. For now, I'm doing the environmental side for the Ocean crew.
Thank you. Tim Novotny.
Yes, thank you. Tim Novotny. I'm the communications manager and assistant administrator with the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. I love your backdrop.
Thank you. Simpson Reef. Yes, I got very lucky with that shot. Thank you.
Nice. Mayor Benetti.
Mayor Coos Bay. This is Joe Benetti, Mayor Coos Bay, and I also sit on the Airport Commission.
Thank you. And Sarah Corbis.
Hi, I'm Sarah Corbis. I work with Advisian Worley Group. I've been working on MHK and offshore wind projects for half a dozen years or so now, and I live in Portland, Oregon, so I have a keen interest particularly in Oregon renewables.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. I have a call-in number. It's a 415-412-0332.
Yes, that's me, Ross Tyler.
Oops. You're echoing, Ross. I think you might be connected. double connected.
Don't click for me.
Let's try that again.
Is that any better?
So
I'm gonna mute your call-in number. Let's try that. How about now? Oh,
Okay, is that better?
there we go. Thanks, Ross. Nancy.
Hi, this is Nancy Kirshner Rodriguez with the Business Network for Offshore Wind. I've met some of you before. I'm the Western Director, and I'm glad to be working with all of you.
Thanks,
and
Nancy.
Glad to see so many colleagues.
John Shad. I know John's multitasking. John Shad is with BPA, so I'll just introduce him there. Kevin Bannister.
Hi, Kevin Bannister with Principal Power. Good to see so many familiar faces. Hey, Mike. Long time no see. Mike Graney.
Good to see you, Kevin.
Jeff Hill.
Well, you don't see me actually, but I'll show you. trying to keep the hair out of my eyes these days.
In the basement.
In the basement.
Oh, I see you. Good to see you.
Jeff Hill. I can't hear you, Jeff. Can you hear me? Oh, let's see.
Sorry.
There you
Jeff
go.
Hill. I work for Sauce Brothers. I'm the general manager of towing operations in Coos Bay.
Thank you. Jim Leonard.
Hi, everybody. This is Jim Leonard. I'm with Magellan Wind. We have a joint development agreement with Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, which is developing 1.6 gigawatts of offshore wind off the east coast of the United States. I've been active in offshore wind since 2006, getting the first offshore wind PPA, 400 megawatts for Blue Water Wind off the state of Delaware. And at Deepwater Wind as managing director, got the legislation approved to build the Block Island wind farm. And lastly, I founded and ran the Offshore Wind Development Coalition, a Washington, D.C. based group from 2010 to 2014 to advocate for federal policy and state policy initiatives. Since 2014, my partner Jeff Keeney and I have been focused on the West Coast, primarily in California, but now also in Oregon for floating offshore wind. Really pleased to be part of Ocean and really respect the leadership that Shannon is role that she's playing here.
Thank you, Jim. Tom Calvanese, you made it. Yay.
I made it. Thanks for inviting me, and good to see some friendly faces. I'm a fish scientist living in Port Orford, where I work for Oregon State University, managing the Port Orford Field Station, and I'm also on the Port Commission for the Port of Port Orford.
Excellent. Thank you. Bill Henry.
Hi, can you hear me, Shannon?
Yeah.
Hi, Bill Henry. I work in a different sector in the energy efficiency space, but my interest in this area is I recently completed a report through my graduate work at Portland State University on some of the transmission planning aspects of offshore wind. So I'm interested to stay involved and learn more about how that might develop. I wasn't able to make it to some of the previous calls, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about how this is going. So happy to be involved.
Cool. Good to see you again, Bill. Mark Petrie.
Good morning, Diestis. Mark Petrie. I am a representative from the Confederated Tribes of the Kustor Umpqua Saisal Indians, and I sit on the tribal council as the vice chair for the tribe. And my role in Ocean is I chair the cultural preservation group, and I am really interested in engaging with you all, and also get the word out to our other tribal nations, our other sovereign nations in the states, and see if we can have a coordinated effort to move towards offshore wind energy, possibly. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Mark.
Awesome.
Katie Jacobson, I'm so glad to see you here. We haven't met yet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Jacobson. I'm a county commissioner in Lincoln County. And before that was with Oregon Sea Grant for about 16 years. It's nice to see so many people on here from my past life. Kevin Bannister, it has been a while. We need to catch up. So nice to see everybody, and happy to try to be of help with this group as I can. I've been involved in offshore energy and specifically wave energy for many years.
Thanks. Let's see, Mike Olson.
Hello, I'm Mike Olson with Equinor. We're an energy company headquartered in Norway. We have leases offshore New York and Massachusetts for offshore wind, and we're pursuing opportunities on the West Coast as well.
Thanks for calling in. Sheila Megson.
Sorry, I didn't expect to be called. I'm staff at Representative David Brocksmith's office. However, I have a huge personal curiosity and interest in renewable energies. So I got picked to be the one to come here because he had to go to a caucus call.
Great, thanks. I'm so glad that you called in. Henry Tillman.
Thanks, Shannon. Henry Tillman here, principal for Tillman Associates. I do consulting for developers and trade groups on transmission and energy market issues.
Jason Bush.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Jason Bush, Executive Director with the Pacific Ocean Energy Trust, POET.
Excellent. Travis DeVille.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Travis DeVille. Good morning. I'm from Pacific North National Labs. I've been involved in wind energy for about 5 years, and am completing a study recently released on the grid value of offshore wind energy in the West. So this is my first ocean call, but happy to listen in and hear what the conversation is all about. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Good to meet you virtually. Kyle Stevens.
Kyle Stevens, I'm the Executive Director with the Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board. Thanks for letting us join.
Cool, thanks, Kyle. Michael Mitten.
Michael Mitten, I'm retired, currently helping the Ocean Corps members wherever I can, mostly focused on policy right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. And I see one more. It's a call-in number with an area code 325.
Hey, Shannon, it's Kate McKeever from RWE.
Great.
Hi to the whole group.
You're a policy wonk, right, Kate?
Yeah, well, so I joined RWE about 6 months ago, and I'm leading the government regulatory affairs efforts for U.S. offshore wind, but have worked for other technology companies in the past and also worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under the past 2 governors doing policy work in the energy sector.
Cool. Is there anyone that I missed? Oh, I see.
Hey, Shannon, Alexia Kelly is on.
Oh, yes. Excellent. Welcome to
Can
your
you hear
new
me?
job. Yes.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Alexia Kelly. I'm with NG Impact, which is NG Group's newest business unit. So we, NG, for those of you who don't know us, is the largest independent power producer in the world. We're active in offshore wind in Europe. And I am based in Oregon and was born in Yachats and grew up in Newport, Oregon. So have a deep personal interest in how we develop the blue economy for the entire state. So it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Shannon. Look forward to engaging.
Right on, thanks. Is there anyone else that I missed?
Mark Healy, Coquel Indian Tribe Water Environmental Specialist, and I'm on the core team.
Thank you.
David
And,
Petrie.
oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
Yes, David Petrie, enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes, Kuslu-Umpqua Sayusla Indians, business development manager for DB Western. And DB Western has been involved in research and development of offshore wind technology for 7 years. And, we look forward to bringing this new industry to the South Coast.
And I would add the precipitator of oceans formation. Jason Searman.
Yeah, hi everybody. Kind of didn't know what to expect. It's been on my calendar for a while. I'm with the Oregon Department of Energy. I've met a lot of you, not everybody, but I'm still trying to understand how I'm busier in a slowdown period than I ever was when things were normal. But yeah, I kind of doing a lot for Odo. I mostly really track the integrated resource plans for the investor-owned utility companies, which pretty much puts me at the intersection of everything that is in the energy industry. So I kind of maybe have a little bit of knowledge of everything, but maybe not a deep knowledge of anything. But yeah, I'm just curious to see what's going on with offshore wind, and it sounds like this was a good call to randomly join. I don't have a ton of bandwidth on my plate right now, but I just had just enough to jump on the call and see what this was all about. So just probably going to sit back and listen, but happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you everyone. Is there anyone else who has not introduced themselves on the call?
Hi, Shannon. This is Sam.
Hi,
Sam
Sam.
Shores. I'm Ocean Public Outreach Co-Chair and member of the steering committee here in Coos Bay, local to Coos Bay. Also own a commercial fishing boat, 43-foot tuna boat. So I'm knowledgeable of the ocean. Also surf out here. Recently ran on the ticket for county commissioner, trying to build the bridge between industry and the environment. And we are ready in Coos Bay to welcome some new industry in the renewable energy field. And a lot of folks are excited about that. So I'll be staying tuned. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, last call.
Tina Carpenter here with SOWIB as well.
Oh, great. All right, we'll get going, I hope. Let's see. Okay, Ocean, please make sure that you are muted. There's a little bit of background noise going on. We are a cross-cultural community-based organization. We have an initial mission to explore the opportunities and challenges of offshore wind and to support the responsible development of other advanced energy technologies for the benefit of the planet, the people, and the coastal communities of Oregon in the near term and for generations to come. Somebody has background music, or it's not music, it's almost like an industrial sound in the back. So make sure you're muted, please. Thank you, it went away. Ocean formed around public forums that were organized by a coastal citizen who had a desire to let the public know what was going on in the discussions between BOEM and the State Offshore Wind Task Force, and to instigate a more coastal-centric conversation about if and how offshore wind might work for us. We have been able to organize ourselves thanks to seed funding and considerable organizational support from DB Western Engineering and Fabrication down here in Coos Bay, as well as POET, and Jason Bush, the executive director, is on the call today. We have a very diverse group in our core group. I won't read through all of this. You will get a slide deck, so if you'd like to see As is typical in a lot of these organizations, the members wear a lot of different hats. So we've got a lot of strength that gives us in understanding the nuances of various aspects, as projects like this would touch a lot of people. A bit of context about those opportunities and barriers to floating wind as we see them. Oregon is an energy importer. Almost half of that energy, electricity right now, is from non-renewable generation capacity. If you look to the right of the slide, that shows you the bigger the dots, the bigger the generation capacity. Keep in mind that those dots that represent natural gas, petroleum products, coal, will all be going away in terms of service, useful service to the Washington and California markets. Hydro is a significant and contentious contributor to our inexpensive Northwest clean energy mix. In fact, just as recently as last October, we had tribes calling for the removal of the Columbia River dams. So bit of a wild card there. As you can see, our average electricity cost in the Northwest, Washington and Oregon, 8 to 9 cents a kilowatt hour is considerably less than the United States average, which is 13 cents, and very much less than California's average just to our south. Oregon's coastal communities rely on electricity that is imported to meet our most basic energy needs. All of this electricity flows through transmission lines. This map is showing those transmission lines as well as the dots that represent the in Oregon capacity. And there are definitely more dots than that now, but not out on the coast. So we have constrained transmission lines, and they are traveling through catastrophe-prone routes. I once heard NOAA say that the Oregon coast is subject to every natural disaster except for locusts and lava. Another opportunity that we see in the future is if there was offshore wind transmission to an entire integrated Western grid, Oregon could become an exporter of clean energy to a growing and very lucrative market. There is an anticipation of about 17% growth on the Western coast in the next 20 years. And of course, we are simultaneously electrifying our transportation grid. Both Southern Oregon and Northern California have access to world-class wind resource. Up in the north, where we've got the Humboldt area, however, they have a limited transmission network capacity, and they are isolated from the loads electrically. The more active call area to the south and central California is close to those loads, doesn't have those transmission issues, but has some potential incompatibility with other beneficial uses. Here you see the overlays of Department of Defense, marine sanctuaries, and commercial fisheries. Thanks to BOEM's work and PNNL, we now know that Oregon's transmission can accommodate about, they say, over 2 gigawatts of floating wind. The quote there is that over 2 gigawatts of offshore wind can be carried by current transmission to strengthen coastal grids, allow for additional renewable energy integration from the east, and reduce power flows into Oregon without exporting significant power. This is very significant to us. We have some quite a bit of South Coast port potential. We have the International Port of Coos Bay, which has that direct deep water port access. We have a well-established coastal construction, maritime, and manufacturing capacity. We have an existing ocean outfall that was for a pulp and paper mill that I used to be the environmental manager for. So we have that power and fiber beach crossing taken care of there. We've got transmission hub capacity, and it's also a foreign trade zone and a red zone. Both of those have some potential economic benefits to development. Port of Umpqua, just to the north of us, also has some good ocean port access, also has well-established coastal construction, maritime, and design and manufacturing capacity. Again, another ocean outfall for power and fiber beach crossing, landing, transmission hub, and both have marine railway spurs. Some of those potential barriers, compatibility with other beneficial uses, marine fisheries, listed species, and any kind of navigation, ocean maritime navigation. And of course, if we're talking about a long-term build out and actually delivering Oregon offshore wind to the California market, we would most likely be looking at a long-term high voltage deep sea transmission. These things take time and a lot of money. So our strategies based on what we have found and we know, and again, we're 6 months old, we're newbies. We're cultivating energy policy to meet our coastal needs. And we see that offshore wind would also help those coastal needs. So it's very primarily featured in our policy movements. Advocate for transmission and grid process development to meet those needs. Assessing our regional and local offshore wind and blue energy economic development capacity, and identifying and promoting a properly sized first project. We believe that that project should be informed by coastal community needs and preferences, as well as some ready scalability and the ability to stack the values of multiple benefits to multiple stakeholders. We also see a potential to increase the understanding of our technology, our rapidly evolving ocean and climatic environments, and the resources that both offer. This last also recognizes that floating wind has not been deployed in the Pacific Ocean off of our coasts. There might be some benefit to a phased potential build out that would allow the development community as well to learn about those opportunities and challenges that the Pacific Ocean presents. Our MO is to expedite and influence the inquiry into the potential of offshore wind for maximized economic, environmental, societal benefits to Oregon Coast communities, while simultaneously meeting a need for Oregon Coast community representation.
I gotta work tomorrow, that's why. No.
Oh, I think it's Kate, maybe. Kate, can you mute yourself? Thanks. We also recognize that Oregon coastal communities were not being represented in energy sector policy proceedings. So Ocean's simultaneously filling both of those roles. So we are implementing a model of front-end stakeholder engagement to shape projects and policy, while we're increasing public and policymaker understanding of the potential values through resilience, reliability, and blue economy development. Excuse me, my dog wants my attention. Sit down, sit down. Thank you. Bill Henry is on the line. This is the next two slides I stole with his permission from some of his graduate presentations. So the traditional project proponent model is you've got a close group. In this case, it would most likely really predominantly be the development community. They come up with the needs statement, they brainstorm the ideas. That's when the project's really pliable and you could actually impact it. Get that kind of first contact of socialization. The project's really pretty forming up then. And then by the time the formal proposal gets out, which is when really the larger scale public involvement and multiple stakeholder involvement occurs, that pliability of the project is quite a bit lower. A lot of investment has already been made. So what we are doing is flipping that around and trying to get the coastal perspective, a broader stakeholder perspective on how the project is actually shaped and what that process looks like while it is still pliable and formative at the front end. So that's where we are here. So here's our May update. We've been scheduling monthly updates to let everybody know what we're up to, and also let everybody know, as you heard on the introductions from the call, we've been having some wonderful all-star casts who come into our calls and then also follow up with us and provide really valuable information and network and opportunities for us. So that's the point of this, and that's what we're going to do for the next 30 minutes. Please, let's see, I do have my chat open. So if anybody has something, actually just unmute yourself and interrupt me if you have a question as we go forward, please. The high points of this update, understanding the resource and other beneficial uses. We're very interested in buoy deployment to further that cause. Cultivating supportive policy, would like to let you know what we've been up to. We've been very busy, as Jason said. It's been ridiculously engaging, ridiculous levels of engagement in the energy policy sector. Maximizing that coastal benefit. We've been really working to promote tribal leadership, and through Ocean have been able to place the tribes at a point of leadership, both in those energy policy proceedings as well as that cultural preservation out here. We also see a real opportunity for the lead there in microgrid resilience at the community level. And right-sizing that first project, that BOEM report that was just issued is very helpful. It helps to nail down some of those very many variables that will go into that first project. Let's go. Okay, gathering intelligence. We'll start there. Bill, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, consistent with what Shannon was talking about, we're trying to get as much information up front to start the discussions going and doing it in an effective way. You're all probably very well aware of the existing wind resources that we've got here on the West Coast, especially up in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of changes in the ocean that are happening, and there are some benefits, some drawbacks, but primarily by one of our strong motivations for pushing for, advocating for the offshore wind is to help deal with some of the greenhouse gas pollution that's leading to ocean acidification and other issues. And one of the nice things we have here is the Oregon universities have a long-standing and strong expertise in a variety of areas that are applicable here, whether it's climate science or marine biology, the marine engineering, physical oceanography. So we have the opportunity to tap into some really great resources. And so we're interested we're advocating and interested in gently pushing forward to get as much data as possible so that when we have those early discussions, we can have them be as productive as possible. All right. What we're interested in doing is we know that there is a buoy that's managed by PNNL, or certainly organized by it, that it's available for deployment in different places. There's an upcoming deployment starting in July off Humboldt. And simply from the standpoint of having additional information in the California current farther north to collect information that is very precise, and in the correct areas, we would like to see about relocating that after the time in Humboldt up here. Now, there's a lot of work that would need to be done to make that happen, but that's one of the things that we're seeking and sort of pushing forward to do that. One of the things about it is that we think that the information can be, and the nice thing about this buoy is it can have a multiple variety of instruments and such that will allow for data that would be pertinent for a variety of disciplines. So back to you, Shannon.
Policy. We had set a goal that Ocean could establish itself as a stakeholder with the agencies and various policy authorities in our state, which we have done with the Oregon Public Utility Commission, Oregon's Department of Energy, the Executive Office, and our NGO coalition members. Now we are using that information and the growing body of additional information to prepare for our legislative presence here in the state of Oregon. Somebody needs to mute. We do have an ocean policy huddle. Some of you have already received a doodle poll. I'm trying to schedule that for the first week in June. If you would like to be a part of that conversation to help us to shape up and focus our legislative agenda and actually our strategy that we have in the works for the next 12 months, please send me an email, let me know, because I would like to hear from you. Some of the ways that we have introduced ourselves to the various players in Oregon, the Executive Order 2004 went out to all of the state agencies, but there were some very pointed directives to both the PUC and Department of Energy. We were able to submit our comments to the PUC on their responses. If you're interested in any of our submittals in any of these slides, I'm happy to send them out to you if you like reading that kind of stuff. A summary for us, though, is that we believe that resource valuation, that's the resource valuation, how you value electricity, should reflect resilience, reliability, and societal cost of carbon, which it does not right now. System planning, that's for distribution and transmission, should recognize isolated load pocket communities, that's us out on the coast, and their reliability needs, and differentiate those from other communities that aren't as isolated from the source of their electricity, or perhaps as susceptible to natural disasters. Transmission planning should accommodate all scales of distributed Oregon clean energy capacity, from rooftop solar to large-scale floating wind. And wildfire reliability measures should include local generation and storage capacity. Through the process of talking with the PUC and passing around thoughts on our responses, we were able to get those messages out and increase the level of understanding of both offshore wind and our coastal community electricity perspective with coalition members that we regularly work with. Renewable Northwest, Community Renewable Energy Association, Northwest Energy Coalition, NIPSI, and Oregon Solar Energy Industry Association. As a result of PUC staff deliberations and consideration of the executive order, in addition to those early listening sessions, they did issue a response. They definitely have signaled that they will have a more extensive stakeholder process in really fleshing out that response. But I like the 3 bullets that they have identified for action in discussion: greenhouse gas reduction activities, impacted communities, and wildfire prevention and mitigation. We check all 3 of those boxes. So if we're going to triage to level of stakeholder importance, we get to be at that table. That's good. Distribution system planning is an open docket. There are several very important open dockets at the PUC right now, one of which is very active. That's distribution system planning. Those of you who are big wind folks might not think that that pertains to you, but this is a comprehensive docket. It is wide open and it is encompassing all areas. Particularly of interest to Ocean are non-wire solutions. Currently, those are referred to PUC as non-wire alternatives, but that's changing. Those non-wire solutions are things like distributed resources, so renewable energy generation closer to where the load is going to be used, and other advanced energy technology, storage, for example. integration of resilience considerations into the planning and procurement processes associated with distribution system planning, recognition of locational values, recognizing the distance and the supply line that the electricity is flowing through to get to the isolated community loads, and inclusion of those geographic isolation considerations as a measure of frontline communities. There's a lot of focus legislatively in the state of Oregon about frontline communities and the impacts that electricity has on them. In that equity discussion, geographic isolation was not a part of the conversation, and now it is. Capacity is another docket that is open, but I say it's sleeping. There's nothing scheduled right now. I think there's some desire to see how the DSP goes, as well as responses to the executive order, and there's a lot to do. However, when it does reopen its doors, we have been pushing for capacity is looking at how electricity is valued, and that will definitely inform how it is procured for Oregonians in the state of Oregon. We have a very much an interest in resource value stacking, and when that capacity docket does open up again, we did let know PUC managing that docket of this BOEM report that PNNL just published this month, that we would like that to be a part of the conversation. Here's a couple of quotes from that same report that definitely support value stacking, at least in the case of floating wind. We also had the input period for the Department of Energy's biennial energy report. If you're interested in knowing more about energy in Oregon, the 2018 report has been out there since 2018. It's invaluable. You've seen some of the images in this presentation. It's a tremendous resource for telling the story and helping policy and decision makers make informed decisions. They put out a very extensive stakeholder process to invite those that use that to help inform what the update that will be published later this year will include. And offshore wind technology, planning process, resource, and value potential will now be included in that. Due to the input from Pacific Ocean Energy Trust, the help of affiliated tribes of the Northwest Indians, and very much thankful for Business Network for Offshore Wind for helping us with our input. Tillman and Associates, I spelled your name wrong again. I'm sorry, I will fix that. And Avangrid. There's also ERESA, the Oregon Renewable Energy Market Assessment. That is a 12-month project, hopefully, maybe, Jason. We'll see what happens with COVID. That will definitely be highlighting the recognition of the growing nexus between defense and homeland security and energy siting, as we alluded to down in California, but looking at that specifically up here in Oregon. Mark, would you like to speak a bit?
Sure. So for the cultural preservation side of the group, we are, as it says here, investigating leveraging potential of coastal tribal microgrids, which is pretty exciting for, in Northern California. There's Blue Lake Rancheria, who has a really successful project, which I've mentioned before if you've been on the call. And also the Yurok tribe in California is working on similar efforts. And so taking lessons learned from their projects, utilizing these other resources from NREL and BIA funding opportunities, and working with different groups to look at the potential of those microgrids and expanding it to our rural areas here on the coast. There's one other slide. Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah.
So this slide is an image of a coastline, and down in California, INRAL is doing some visualization simulations for their call areas. And I know that as a cultural preservation standpoint, the view shed of the coastline is really important to many people, including my tribe and our local residents here on the coast. Many residents have moved to retire here, then they don't want to see, wind turbines out there sometimes. So having these simulations, can really help appease their concerns that they're going to have impacted view sheds. I think that's something that we're definitely looking at for Oregon, similar visualizations. So I think that's all I had, Shannon. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So right now, another activity that we have, as with a lot of organizations, is we're kind of brainstorming, spitballing shovel-ready recovery projects. If and when there are funding opportunities that may come from various agencies and perspectives, and with different goals, what are those that would help us out here on the coast? Some of the ideas that we've come up with, more regional port infrastructure needs assessments. We know from other parts of the world where floating wind has been deployed that it's an all hands on deck, very intensive industry that requires a lot of work, a lot of space, and some good port access. And we have that, but we also know that definitely some infrastructure upbuilding would need to go on to fully support that. As we mentioned, we're very interested in a buoy. We've had some initial conversations. It's $1 million for the year for that to be outfitted, redeployed, permitted, and placed, plus or minus. So we'll see what that's coming in at. We're also very interested in looking at the feasibility of the infrastructure needs to support a first project that is really designed around a net zero Oregon coast and alleviation of wires solutions and upgrades for EPA. As Mark spoke about, we're very interested in tribal scale microgrid feasibility, as well as critical services community. For example, we just had a bond measure here in Coos County to pay for a 911 system upgrade. We have huge outages in our 911 system even. So we definitely have some opportunities in energy and communication and public safety out here.
Shannon.
Yes.
Would this be a shovel-ready project to actually develop a microgrid for a tribe or for maybe even maybe tribal leadership buildings with storage? No matter how it's powered, that would add a lot of resilience to that community. And then I think adding the green energy production with offshore wind would be a strong follow-up to that. That would be really useful. But that's
Absolutely.
Just an idea is actually implementing.
Yeah. I don't think you were here during introductions.
No, I'm sorry, I missed out.
Well,
this is Chaz Jones. I'm affiliated Tribes Northwest Indians Tribal Liaison on their climate change program.
Thanks, Chaz.
Yes.
So since we're brainstorming, any other ideas from folks on the line? You can shout it out now or connect with me later.
Shannon, this is Jim Leonard. At Humboldt Bayport, they're using Mott MacDonald to do a lot of studies on what permits would be needed to do the upgrades at the port, both uplands and at the quay. So that may be something that Coos Bay would consider some type of engineering analysis to obtain permits that would eventually, be sought after once we see the industries beginning to be stood up here.
Okay. Noted. Thank you, Jim. And of course, we're just ever needy. But I have to say, if you've been coming to our calls, some of the wish list items have been checked off the list. Either they were already underway and we didn't know about it, or through our meetings and our network, Poet's been tremendously supportive in helping us to move the needle on getting the data that we want. We still this is a big wish list for the entire nation. It sounds like capacity resource valuations of what the societal cost of carbon. It's out there and nobody really has their hands around how we're going to measure that one. And community resilience, reliability, those other issues that maybe weren't fully valued before. At least we have some concept of how we're going to monetize those values. But those two will be a long process. Model development for grid, full integration transmission for offshore wind. Again, the buoy that's still there. There are some, Bill, do you want to jump in and talk about environmental, please?
Yeah, there are a number of studies that are being done initiated by the supported by the California Energy Commission. And it's frustrating for me as a marine biologist knowing that the ocean here, especially the California current, doesn't stop at the California-Oregon border. So there are a variety of data sets that actually go well beyond that border. So what we're seeking to do is to advance the analysis of some of those data sets or build on the existing data collection so it does better reflect both the characters of the California current and our interest in Oregon-specific data. So that's both, there's a California bird analysis, which is a very interesting study having to do three-dimensional activities by the birds. That's got importance, not just how far they're offshore, but how high they are, considering that we've got equipment that does go up to a certain distance, and it's a certain distance off the seafloor, the seastead. So if you have animals that are not getting into the area where the turbines are, that excludes some of the concerns people might have. So that's just an example of already collected data that would benefit by expanding the analysis into those data sets that are here off Oregon. Now, the other thing is to get some more updated seafloor topography and bathymetry so that when we do have early discussions with people as to what might be appropriate call areas to try to investigate further, we have as current and as useful data as possible. So that's it, Shannon.
Cool, thanks.
Shannon, this is Jason. I'll pile on there with Bill. We're well aware of course, the excellent studies that are going on in California. And as you know, Shannon, some of the other folks on the call, one of the things we've been trying to do here in Oregon is to leverage those studies and to work with our agency partners who are funding those studies, especially the federal ones, to do the same for Oregon. And we've had some success on that front, and that continues. But it's incumbent upon us, on Ocean, on Poet, on the Oregon representatives to continue to lean on those agencies and leadership to make sure that issues like the bird, California current ecosystem, environmental studies that are being done are done in such a way as to be relevant for Oregon. Transmission studies are exactly the same type of situation. Our transmission issues, in some sense, are California's issues, and vice versa, especially as we move into a future with broader energy markets. And I'll finish by reminding folks that, speaking of birds, we're going to be hosting a webinar next week at June 29th at 10 o'clock. You can find the link on the Poet website, where we'll be highlighting the status of science on bird issues and the technologies that are being developed to monitor bird issues moving forward, with a third person, Gary George from Audubon, talking about bird issues from the environmental perspective. environmental NGO perspective. That's it.
Thanks, Jason. I'll get the calendar updated and also update the other suggestions for shovel-ready projects into this slide deck. Other calendar updates, we're still in the DSP planning, and in fact, our next meeting's at 1:30. Oregon's legislative days are scheduled for next year. Of course, those will be remote too, so that'll be fun. But we'll get a little sneak peek on what the agencies and the different legislative committees are thinking in forming up their legislative concepts. That might help to inform our approach. The BOEM Task Force meeting has been scheduled for June 4th for Oregon. Many of those task force members are on this call. There are some other research informational webinars that BOEM's hosting coming up in July and September. And I apologize, I only left 3 minutes. I was trying to leave more room, but does anyone have anything for the good of the order that they would like to share before we adjourn? Okay, well, if you come up with something else, you know, you're free. Please do email me. We love to have conversations, and definitely many of you know I will bug you about your areas of expertise and try to get you to huddle up in littler huddle groups. We'll have our next meeting like this. Our update will be in a month, and in the meantime, you'll be getting a slide deck and recording of this meeting, as well as the list of participants here. So I will let you all get on with your beautiful day, and I'm going to sneak in a run with my dog before the next PUC meeting. So have a great day.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Shannon. See you again.
Bye-bye.